But first, I wanted to get started on something that was kind of interesting. Half of it, I want you to understand part of my strategy, and then the other half, I just want to share my observations. And so, last week on this event that went on to the podcast the next day, at the end, I invited people, or maybe it was at the beginning, I forget, but I invited people to send me a message at a specific time on LinkedIn through the podcast, and I got 39 total DMs that referenced that on the Friday. Hey, I heard you on the podcast. You're doing questions. Can I do this? From a marketing standpoint, the reason that I tested it is because it's basically a CTA. It's to understand, if we're saying to do something, how many people do it? Who are those people? What are they asking? It's a marketing test. And so I'm part of what we're doing is sharing some of the learnings and about what our strategy is, especially for the marketers out there. And so I got 39 DMs from people. They were sort of all across the board, but there was one theme that sort of bubbled to the top, and it was a really long message with so many details of just overcomplicating the issue of what you're trying to solve. And so the response that I gave back to several people, it was like, you need to simplify the problem. You need to understand what is the thing that you're actually trying to solve. Because a lot of these details don't matter. When you simplify business, it's very simple. I need to understand my customer better. I need to have a different product. I'm not sure who my customer is. I'm not communicating with them effectively. When you simplify the problems, we're not organizationally aligned, there's not actually that many overall business problems, especially when you simplify marketing. And so that was just an observation for people. It's not feedback. I'm not calling out anyone that sent me DMs. Please don't feel that way if that's how you took it. It's just an observation about when you're trying to solve something, to try and really get to the root of what the actual issue is. So now we're going to move into the agenda. And so where are we going to start here? I want to start with this agenda topic. It's the first one that says we're in the word of mouth era of B2B buying. And I see people starting to talk about this and starting to recognize it. And I'm recognizing it too. I've been mentioning it for a couple of years, but it's becoming very apparent right now that in 2000, I think it was probably as early as 2014, not that long ago, 2014, the way that B2B buyers got information was conferences, Google search, and analyst firms. Those were the sources of information about what things to do, what things to buy, how to drive your strategy, different things like that. And today, the difference is it's through social, with trusted peers, and inside of communities. But it's all word of mouth between people that are peers or people that trust each other. The conferences are not in control anymore. The analyst firms are not in control anymore. And because people have access to people that they trust more than vendors or blogs, they actually don't need to go to Google either. They go to the source of the people that they trust the most because they have access to them. Because the internet, as it's continued to mature especially in B2B, this was around for a long time in B2C, but especially in B2B, if you can think back to yourself as a business professional in 2014, you were not interacting with other marketers or other people in your profession like you do today. It's hyper connected all the time in a ton of different places and different channels. And so I think that's a really interesting insight if you start to think about how you're executing marketing. The thought is, and I mentioned this earlier, the idea is, how do you give people enough opportunities to talk about you with somebody else? And the way that you do that is that more people know you put out information on the internet, so more people have the opportunity to share it, the opportunity to see it, the opportunity to be aware of you. So then if more and more people are aware of you, or they like your content or different things like that, when somebody asks them, hey, do you have a recommendation for an event management software for my virtual conference in Q4, that the person that they ask thinks about your company, even if they don't use it, because they like your content or they know somebody that uses your product or different things like that. And so giving more people opportunities to do that, I think is a really key insight. And if I'll give an experiment to people, I would highly encourage a couple, maybe one or two, because it's a lot of work. I think one or two companies, that's what I'm hoping for. Takes me up on what I'm about to say. Go back to your Q1 fiscal quarter closed won opportunities that came through your website and call the main point of contact on the opportunity and ask them how they heard about you. And you're going to get some really interesting stuff. I would wager to bet that more than 50% you're going to get word of mouth through somebody, or I heard about you on social, or through content. At least 50%. It could be a lot. It honestly could be a lot higher. And so the things that you're going to hear: Revenue Collective, heard about you on a podcast, saw your content on LinkedIn, one of your customers recommended our product or your product to us. Those are the things that you're going to get that are coming through the form. And so the idea is, how do you get more people to know about you, to have the opportunity to do that, so more people come through the form and buy things fast with high win rates, and honestly, oftentimes not looking at other vendors. That's the game. Another thing that you could leverage off of this is that I'll just keep ranting here. Another thing that you could leverage off this is the idea of, and I'm going to try and call it, the core term that people use right now is influencers. And I want to rename it to brand collaborations so that it feels different for people, with the idea of how do you interact with people that are influential, that drive buying decisions, that a lot of people ask about what to buy, so that when like 20 people go and ask them about what to buy, they think about you first because you did you had them as the keynote on the virtual event, or you gave them your software tool for free and they got a ton of value from it, or, whatever those exchanges are. I don't think that that the brand collaboration game in B2B is going to be a transactional, I'm going to give you $1,000 to post about our stuff. I think it's going to be a lot more complex. I think the deals should be more structured to something like an analyst firm, but with individual people that have a lot more attention than most analyst firms right now. And so maybe we'll go a little bit deeper on that topic on our virtual event on Thursday with Dave Gerhardt. That's happening at 12 p.m. Eastern this Thursday, May 6th. We'll drop a registration link in the show notes. Maybe we'll add that to the agenda because it's something that I'm interested in going a little bit deeper on. Should I just keep rolling?
Well, I have a few questions if you want to jump them.
I'm down. Yeah. I don't like the monologue. I like kind of going back in and out.
All right. You were on a roll. I wasn't gonna mess you up there. So actually, I'm gonna bring Sean. I'm gonna bring you on live to ask your question. So I'm gonna unmute you. Excited to have you on to share. Go for it.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, Sean?
What's up? Hello, everybody, all the way from Singapore. It's just nice in the morning, so super excited to be
Great
here.
to have
Huge
you
fan.
here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was asking Megan, right? Like let's say you've just joined a SaaS B2B mid-size, mid-market company. How would you design your marketing strategy? And how would you measure the goals? So Chris, I'm a huge follower of all your podcasts. Like, I'm taking notes down every time. So you mentioned so many ways to justify, for example, right? Like marketing sourced, inbound. One of the main ones that you're looking at is inbound demo requests, as well as using custom conversions from Facebook or LinkedIn whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that you mentioned. So which one would come first, and what other measurements would you recommend? I'm struggling to put all together, like a complete playbook or a complete map. So I'm just wondering, like, what goes on in that crazy mind of yours?
Yeah,
there's a lot of things every week. So I'm like, oh, sheesh.
yeah. This is a great question. Are you like, what's your role there? Are you leading the team at this company?
Chris, to be honest, I'll be upfront. I guess you can always like LinkedIn my name and find out that I'm actually from LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So this is actually a more of a question for a lot of the clients that I work with.
Okay.
On a day-to-day. So
Understood.
my role is a client solutions manager. But I totally get where you're coming from, where it's cheaper to retarget on Facebook, and it's for LinkedIn. It makes sense for organic, especially when you're just starting out. And you have to have a decent budget. Let's all be real here. LinkedIn's expensive. I know that as well. I'm from LinkedIn. I know it. But there is effectiveness if you plan it well, right? So I'm just trying to understand as well from your point of view. I have plenty of clients in this situation.
Let's do it.
Mid-size, mid-market, and yeah, how do we go? Yeah, how do we go beyond that as well? So that's more of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, I appreciate the context. The way that I look at it is very simple. I know that I use a lot of terms, and I'm happy that you asked this question so that I can clarify for people, because it's actually really simple. The only thing that really matters is how many people are coming to the website and asking to buy something and then actually buying. So that's the key indicator. Unless you're in super small TAM, like for almost any mid-market company, that should be the indicator. And so how many people, maybe you can, and then you can go back to a company, you can look at the data, right? So we'll go through for a company in the first quarter of last year, they had 30 demo requests a month. And out of those 30 demo requests, they got 10 sales qualified opportunities. And out of those 10 sales qualified opportunities, they're going to win somewhere between 1 and 2 of those. And so you can see how that works from 30 to 10 to somewhere between 1 and 2. And then if you track quarter over quarter, you'd be able to see whether or not that number was growing or not. So maybe next quarter, it goes to 60 and 20 and 4. Right. And so you can see the growth over time through that funnel between demo request, the sales qualified opportunities created off of the context that submitted a demo request. And then finally, the opportunities that were closed won. For some companies with longer sales cycles, you're going to want to center on sales qualified opportunities because the sales cycles might take a long time to play out. And you need to know whether or not the strategy is working before you look at a lagging metric over 90 or 120 days. When we get to the more nuanced answers on like custom conversions and things like that, those are all indicators at the channel level that tell you whether or not that channel is influencing more people to come through and ask for a demo. So the measurement's very simple. And then you need to think about what are all of the activities, like for LinkedIn, for instance. We do a lot of advertising on LinkedIn, probably somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 a month between all the companies. And what we're looking for is, like, in this campaign to this audience of CIOs at companies that are 200 to 2,000 employees, of that audience, how many people saw or clicked on an ad and then asked for a demo at some point over the next 30 days. And then we'll be able to see, and then how much did that demo cost? And then you can build out your conversion rates through the funnel, and you can set a estimated value of what that demo request is worth to you based on the allowable customer acquisition cost that your company has, which can be very ranging in a lot of different ways for a lot of different companies. But ultimately it comes down to how much did that demo cost? What's the likelihood we're going to win? And how much, therefore, is it going to cost us to acquire that customer from an advertising perspective? And so you don't necessarily need to get caught up in all of the different channel metrics. At the beginning, it's just very simple. How many people are coming through your website asking for a demo, are qualified, become a qualified opportunity, and buy something?
Thanks, Chris. Wow, simplicity is key. Love the answer. Chris, if I could, just one more quick one. This one's a little bit more technical. You spoke about custom conversions. I'm just curious, what kind of data you're seeing on your site? Like, are custom conversions, these view-through conversions, even accurate these days? Purely because the whole discrepancy, the whole cookieless world that we're going into, privacy policies whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So your data set is going to be much smaller as compared to like a B2C company, right? So how does that, will that even be accurate, an accurate measure? Like you mentioned over that 30, 90, 120 days that the LinkedIn Insight Tag offers, right? I'm just wondering how accurate that is, and are you really able to justify that? Because I think many companies are struggling to get that level of data to use custom conversions, especially for LinkedIn Insight Tag, or even maybe Facebook. I'm not sure. Yeah, what's your take on this?
Yeah, and so we use a 30-day attribution window on LinkedIn. We used to use a 28-day attribution window on Facebook, but it's been reduced to 7. Tracking custom conversions inside of Facebook and Instagram is no longer accurate. It's underreporting by somewhere between 66 and 75% based on my data with historicals of companies. It's not that the ads aren't effective. It's not that they're not being delivered to the right people. It's just that Facebook isn't able to attribute the conversion to that specific campaign. And so we had historical data and we're seeing what's happening in Salesforce, and we still have confidence to run on that channel, but you just don't have the insights on this exact ad was doing it, or it just doesn't feel accurate enough to really make strong decisions off of it, which is something that we're trying to tighten up. We have projects open with several technology vendors to try and solve this. If any technology vendors are listening to this podcast and think that they can solve the Facebook attribution challenge for B2B with custom conversions, feel free to let me know. On the LinkedIn side, the LinkedIn data is accurate. I feel like the LinkedIn data is relatively accurate to what we're seeing. It makes sense in terms of like overall impressions to conversion rate to different things like that. And the key, when you think about a LinkedIn ad, if you're selling $100,000 a year software tool and you're getting demos for $800 and you're going to win those demos at 10%, then it's going to cost you $8,000 to acquire a $100,000 a year customer, which hopefully has a lifetime value significantly greater than 1 year, which is a great investment for most software. I think almost any software company. And so if you had those metrics, that is like the worst case scenario of what's happening. You're not able to quantify the brand impact that happens when all the other people in your markets see the ads every time, see all the messaging about your product, see the case study that you did with Coca-Cola that was, that you had a great success with them, the videos that you put out, the strategic narrative content or thought leadership content that you're able to distribute via ads. And the impact of that, the brand impact long-term is not being measured by the demo. But just if I only measured on the demo, it still makes very logical sense to do it this way. And so that's the way that I see it on LinkedIn. I can imagine that some of the companies that you're working with might be struggling with it, because I interact with a lot of companies that struggle with it too. Not even running this system not even running the system that I'm trying to say, just running LinkedIn ads in general, like inability to target really, really well, inability to have the right objectives, inability to look at data past the lead and understand what's actually happening and whether or not it's a good use of money. And so like the targeting one is super easy. Like I continue to see it. People need to be able to solve this. Like if you're targeting on LinkedIn, you should be almost always targeting based on job title and company size. Almost always. And I see member skills, job function, seniority level, and all these different things. And go ahead and try running LinkedIn ads to seniority, VP, CXO, and function sales, and then go look at the demographics and see who gets all your ads. It's account executives. The LinkedIn data is not great for targeting between function and seniority. I just don't recommend using that. And so what happens is companies spend a lot of money thinking that they're targeting the right people, and they don't know how to look as to whether or not they're actually getting to the right people, and then they don't get the outcome that I'm talking about. And so that's what I think about in terms of custom conversions. Is attribution challenging in the way that we're doing it? Yeah. But does it work significantly better? And the stuff that I see in Salesforce way better than what was happening before? Yes. And so I can deal with a little bit less tracking on, did this lead come from a Facebook ad, a YouTube ad, or a LinkedIn ad? Who cares? We got 35% more demos than last month.
Thanks, Chris. Amazing stuff.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Sean. Great first question. Hope to see you next week. Andrew Wheeler, you submitted a question in advance, and I'd love to bring you on. I'm unmuting you now.
Hi. Thank you so much for letting me ask a question. I always really appreciate the assistance.
Yeah,
Sure,
Andrew,
my
good
pleasure.
to have you here.
Thank you so much. So I was just really curious. Right now, we are moving away from this direction of really a conversion focus, but more of a brand awareness focus. So I was wondering if you have much experience really generating excitement or demand about a product to customers after they've purchased, so to that we're always in their mind from week to week. Something we were considering was running brand awareness ads on Facebook to customers that have already purchased. And I just would really love to hear about your experience.
So what's the business rationale or business objective around doing this?
Yeah, just overall create better brand awareness to get ourselves out there. Right now, we're just having this issue where after our customers purchase our product or our service, they don't necessarily, there seems to be a drop off after that. And we just want to continue building those relationships after.
Is it a drop off in the relationship? Is it a drop off in usage? Is it churn? Like, what is the, yeah.
Generally, we've seen a drop off in usage, I would
Okay.
definitely say.
Is it product led?
Yes. So we sell curriculum to schools, and then the teachers are using it. And we've seen a drop off in usage from the teachers.
Got it. So somebody can, like, if I wanted to do it, if I was in a school and I wanted to have it for my teachers and I was the principal or whatever, right? And I came in and I could go in and I can buy the license for all of the different teachers, right? And so I could just do that with my credit card.
Yeah.
And then after that, the someone needs to implement it. Who's implementing it?
The teachers are using them in the classrooms.
Got it. And is it because the price is so low that you don't have a customer success manager or a CSM?
Just generally as a team, we're just trying to figure out a strategy for it on the marketing level.
Yeah, I think this is trying to hammer in a nail with a screwdriver with the Facebook ads. I think that the core issue is somewhere between product and success. And I think that the dollars that would be spent on Facebook ads would be much better used in a different way. And so figuring out, like, is there a different way to kick off with everyone so that you get more usage from the teachers? Is there a way to get feedback from the teachers about whether or not this is actually useful? Maybe it's a compliance thing and they don't like to do it. And so I don't know what the product is, but based on what you've told me so far, I feel like this is either a product or a customer success thing. Not that marketing shouldn't help, but that, like, running ads probably isn't the right strategy.
Okay.
I can jump in, Andrew, too. My first job was an account manager at an ed tech company. We sold communication and instruction software into public schools. Awesome. And what I will tell you, and both my parents are teachers, teachers have very little extra free time to spend on, like, learning new tools. And one of the strategies that we had at the time was I actually, as an account manager, as a CSM, I actually spent most of my time on site in classrooms with teachers. And that was really what it took to get them to implement it. And Chris touched on this, but figuring out how the administration at the school could make it either a requirement or position the tool in a way that's going to actually, like, make their job easier. Teachers are asked to do a ton of admin work and are very overloaded. So I would agree with Chris. I think this is like a customer success, and or potentially there are things you can do in the product or the technology to make it easier for them to use. Do you have a customer success team, or is the goal to try and get educators to use this product without any human touch?
So the goal would just be to just get them to keep using the product and to just really focus in on that building the relationship aspect of it.
And in my experience, given the nature of a teacher's job, which is really difficult, like that, either the administrative requirement or a level of sort of human interaction is really required for technology product adoption. It's challenging otherwise, but
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Good question, Andrew. Good to see you.
Cool. Awesome. So Nelson is back in action this week. I'm bringing you on next.
Nice one. Hey, everyone. Thanks,
Hey,
Megan.
hey,
Thanks, Chris.
the
Really
legend's
glad
back.
to, yeah, sorry to have to jet early last week. And I've had these questions burning my conscience.
All right,
So
let's get them answered.
so I was wondering, how does word of mouth and the role of demand gen fit in when it comes to existing customers and like advocacy? And I guess maybe more broadly, like what role does demand gen play post-purchase with existing customers and growth and retention?
It's the whole game. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I guess
like
just
sorry. Having customers that are happy is the most important thing in a business, right? Like, and so and then there are like strategies that you can use or marketing plays to amplify some of the things or give them more opportunities to share their stories or those types of things. But at the root, like no customer is going to want to do that or going to say things that aren't good if they're not happy about their purchase or the use of your product, right? I'm trying to figure out how to go a little bit a layer deeper here on this one. I just don't have it.
You're on mute again, Nelson.
Yeah, bring him back.
I'm bringing you back. I know you have another question. Come on, man. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Nice one. Yeah, and so feel free to pass off that one. I got another one for you. The only reason I asked that is because it seems like demand gen was about like just getting buyers in the door to speak to sales, and I wasn't clear from like the stuff you've put out so far. Maybe I'm missing that content. Like what happens afterwards? Like what are those plays to increase word of mouth or keep the customers happy? And so that's kind of where that thinking was.
Customers happy, marketing plays a role in it, but it's a business thing. Customer success, product, sales, setting the right expectations, and marketing, getting them in, but also marketing driving the narrative into the market, which gives people like a real reason and a mission to keep using the product when the narrative can keep going, right? Like I'm sure that people each use specific tools where they're like really bought into where the company is going, and because of the narrative and because it's communicated effectively and because the product is actually doing that, people have they're much more likely to start talking to other people about it because they believe in the direction that it's going. And so I there's a marketing component, but I think the marketing component, like I mentioned before, like a lot of demand gen teams are just trying to figure out how to get leads in the door. But what I think they should be focused on is how to create content that works across the entire journey. And the reason that it works across the entire journey is because it's helpful to people, regardless of whether you're evangelist customer or you've never used a product. And so
to add on to that, Chris, we've talked about too before, like I've definitely partnered, like in leading customer success teams, I've definitely collaborated very closely with marketing to put on events that customers and prospects are invited to.
Totally.
So an event strategy is a great way to, influence customer retention or growth or advocacy. Communities are another thing that is a typical collaboration between customer success and marketing on cultivating some type of, customer community, whether it's a customer advisory group or focus group. That's another tool and tactic that marketing and customer success will often collaborate on. So I would say, like, once they're a customer, it's those types of activities where you'll typically have someone from the marketing team involved, but customer success also has, a part to play in those initiatives.
No, this idea is not as good as the ones that Megan put out, but we use it here, and I think I've seen a couple other people use it. Is the idea of using gifting for surprise and delight of customers versus trying to get someone into a meeting. Mm-hmm. And so I think that one is really interesting. Most companies tend to lean to, I'm going to use this to get a meeting because they bake it into their CAC calculation, versus if you took that exact same expense and delivered something thoughtful and personalized to a customer because you know them well, that I believe that the net impact to the customer would be dramatically higher to the business than giving out a $50 Starbucks gift card or whatever people are. I got an email from some company, $400 to gift card to sit on a demo. Like, what is going on?
Jesus,
it's getting crazy out there.
People have money to burn.
and their ACV is probably like 1,000. Awesome, thank you. That was really helpful.
Cool.
And then if you want to take this one or pass, it's kind of related. You mentioned like the other school of thought, the lead gen model, and I was wondering, like how, if at all, does your approach vary when the target audience size changes between enterprise, mid-market, and SMB, or does size not matter? And one of the reasons I asked that is because I think the lead gen camp will often say like, oh, well, in order to get enterprise companies to speak with us and interested in us, or to get the higher ACVs, we need to like, you know, do all this stuff that they may not like. And, you know, we don't really enjoy doing and costs a lot.
Yeah. I don't think that actually, I know that the approach doesn't change depending on the ACVs. At the very low ACVs, you get limited on what you can do just because of allowable CAC, right? And so like, there's some things that, like, if you're selling a $7 a month product with no expansion and different things like that, then like, you're going to have to do pure organic marketing, right? But as you start moving up, like, again, I've mentioned this before, like companies say that, oh, we can't get to the enterprise without doing outbound sales. And I'm like, I think we got 16 enterprise demo requests at 10,000 employee plus companies last month for one of our customers. Like, it's the mindset of the executives about the way the world worked in 2011 when they started building an enterprise sales team, and how it's different now is that it's the mindset that's not there, not the model. And so the execution of that is dramatically different. But again, like, we have companies that are, you know, SMB, mid-market, enterprise, all the way up. We're mainly targeting companies that are 200 employees and above for 25K deals for a couple of these companies. And what we're doing is we're targeting across mid-market, and then they have an enterprise segment, and we're running the ads. And some people are coming inbound, and other companies are getting intense signals and 6 cents, and they're going outbound, and it's way more effective than running a lead gen strategy. And so there's just like, there's a lot of other ways that I think are a combination between more effective and more customer centric in today's world. Cool.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Nelson. You can always
Good
count
job,
on
Nelson.
you.
Yeah, we like it.
David Tarner, I'm going to bring you on next.
Cool. Let's get David on, and then we'll jump back to the agenda.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, so I got a question about sort of voice of customer interviews, I think you would call them. You know, talking to customers, obviously an important pillar of, you know, your strategy. Listening to recorded calls is nice, doesn't really count, right? Getting secondhand feedback from sales reps, also nice, but not really what you're talking about. If we want to get better at this, do you have some tips and some kind of ideas? This is not about like taking a bulleted list of 10 questions and asking the same questions to the customers, right? And just recording their answers. This is like, you said before, it's like the 5th follow-up question where you actually get something useful when you continue to ask why, or tell me about that. So like, how do we continue to get better at these customer interviews? I feel like you mentioned like a mentor or something that early in your career you went with and kind of taught you their philosophy on this.
Yeah.
You can share a little bit more about that, or are there other, I don't know, resources or books or something like that where it's like we can practice that? And I don't think there's like a template, because that's kind of the opposite of what you're trying to do, right? But maybe there's some sort of framework that you think about when you do these kind of interviews.
Yeah. Shout out to Andy Midland. Helped me out a lot in like 2013. I have been using it ever since. And so the answer is a combination between mindset and practice. And that's all it is. And so, you know, going into the things, understanding what you're trying to accomplish and having a plan and knowing those types of things, and then actually going out and doing it. And over time you get better. I've been doing this stuff for 8 years, right? It probably took me at least a year. I'm not trying to deter you. I'm saying that it took me at least a year to feel very comfortable going into these things and doing them. The first place to start for sure is friendly customers. Like, it's just going to give you a nice pulse and get you able to figure out the flow and those types of things. And what I try to do in that case is I try and start broad, Like, I don't want to talk about the product initially. I want to talk about what's going on, what their other priorities are, how they're measured, what they're struggling with. And I want to hear, because when I was doing this as a product manager, I was looking to figure out if there's opportunities to build new products, right? And so like, I wasn't looking for them to tell me how good our product was. I was trying to figure out what other challenges they had. Maybe we could build a second product. And so being able to be open about those different things. So you have a roadmap at the beginning with customers. I just go broad, like you want to learn something, right? So have a plan about what you want to learn, but don't necessarily force the issue. The key is when somebody gives you something like, oh, we're struggling with, really struggling with this, that you're able to on the fly go deeper into that little thing. And then if you get to a place where it's a dead end, then you kind of move out and you go back into your top level question and you kind of go back down. So a customer just gives you an opportunity to do that in a setting that feels a little bit safe, for lack of a better word. But you really get the stuff when you go out and talk to prospects, people that don't use your product, that use a competitor's product, that are using the status quo, and understanding what those people feel like in a lot of different areas, how they feel about your product, how they feel about your competitor, category, again, measurement, what they're working on, who makes the decisions in their company. There's like a million different things. And so typically in a research format, you're going in with a general goal, right? Like I've gone into some of these with the idea of what do our customers know about our clinical research, and how does that compare to what prospects know about it? And I could see the difference in the gaps. And to be honest, a lot of our customers didn't even know a lot of the clinical research that deeply, at least not off the top of their head. And so I was able to assess and understand, okay, the reason that this huge group of people do not use our product is because they don't understand these 4 clinical trials. If I'm in the companies that decided to use the product, understood those, and it made sense to switch from the product they were using before to this because it's better for their patients. And so my job is to figure out how to communicate this to the market in a way where they understand it. And so that's an example of something you can go in and ask questions. Do you know like which product you use right now? How are you managing this? Different things like that. Again, I'm not sure I'm giving you like a super clear-cut answer, because I do believe this is rooted in experience and curiosity and just really wanting to understand people. But I'm happy to answer a follow-up so we can go a little bit deeper for you.
Yeah, he dropped one to me. He was asking what your perspective was on doing it one customer at a time versus like a focus group environment.
I always prefer one-on-one. I'm sure that there are scenarios where it's nice to get people together where they're talking about something, right? Like I'm sure that there are scenarios where that approach makes more sense than doing one-on-ones. But in a lot of my experience, like I've been doing one-on-ones, or like at least me with like one account and maybe like 2 or 3 people in that account. But it's honestly literally usually one-on-one.
Yeah, I find that that's a lot better too, generally speaking. For that, you want to pop back to one of the agenda items, and I'll save up some questions for later.
Yeah. I've been talking about this one for a little while now, and I just want to keep on riffing about it. And so the topic is, and I want to try and just get a little bit further on this one, which is like the idea of the compounding results of marketing innovation. I don't feel like I've clearly communicated this yet. And so we're going to try here. The companies right now have a product roadmap, sometimes that goes out for years, about the things that they want to have in their product, or the acquisitions that they want to make for technology to integrate, or all these different things. They have this massive roadmap about how they're going to build their product. And what I'm suggesting here is that companies think about what they have as a marketing roadmap, about what the skills, the talent, the intellectual property, the operational capabilities to execute certain things, which allow them to take advantage of opportunities in the future that they don't see right now. And the reason that most companies can't is because they're too short-term focused because they're running a marketing strategy that doesn't work as well anymore, which is the lead gen model. And so they're in a lead gen model and they need to spend all of their time and money feeding that system as opposed to fixing that system, which then allows them to go out and start to build, once they're hitting their goals, that they could build a podcast, that they could start to have somebody at their company that's communicating the strategic narrative at events, that they could do brand collaborations or different things like that, that they could be active on LinkedIn with a content strategy where they're producing several pieces of content for LinkedIn every day between company page and personal profiles. And if you think about that from a business standpoint, the idea that you are executing in channels where your competitors don't even know about yet, or they're not taking seriously. The idea that I was on LinkedIn in 2019, and still to this day, most of my quote unquote competitors still don't do it. And we're over here growing rapidly, companies aren't even looking for them anymore. And so you can think about that for your business. And then once you have a content strategy that's flowing through LinkedIn, you have the right skills, you look at things through a different lens. So you see the next opportunity that you would never see. And then since you were looking at it in a different way and you see it because you know what to do, and then you start actually moving on it more quickly. And the idea is that for significant periods of time, you're executing on marketing channels that nobody else in your competitive set is, where your customers are, but your competitors are stuck in the past or don't have the capabilities or don't have the right metrics, that you have this open land to communicate with your target market when nobody else is. And there are channels that are happening right now. I would argue that the same thing is going on for us with a podcast right now. And then what happens where are we going to be in 3 years? Are our competitors even going to be active on LinkedIn at that point? Are they still going to be running the same stuff? Because what typically happens, and we've seen this play out on a variety of channels already, is that by the time the biggest part of the opportunity has passed is when most people actually start doing it, because it's been accepted, because whatever in that platform has created metrics around it, because Salesforce built an ebook about it, and because Gartner published a report about it. And that's probably going to happen for a podcast around 2026. And at that point, and I'm just throwing out there for impact, I don't know what the real data is, but at that point, there could be 3 or 4 or 5 more things that you could be doing before your competitor is even doing a podcast. And I just don't think people think about things in a long-term lens like that, where over a 3-year period of time, how the amount of progression that happens relative to your competitive set, where you are more effectively communicating with your customers over a sustained period of time. I just think it's a massive opportunity, and I wish people, it's part on me. I wish I could communicate it more clearly because it's so clear in my head, but it just feels so obvious right now that executing marketing well over the next 2 to 5 years relative to your competitors is the winning formula.
That was a good one. I feel like we've talked about this before, but I feel like, fear holds people back, because I think there's an element of needing to do something different, do the opposite of what's been done before, try something new. But whether it's people's mindset, their fear, constraints within an organization, there are all these reasons to not try or to not do these things. Holds people back.
But you got to start somewhere, right? You got to start moving the train forward. You're not going to get from where you are right now to over there. I've been in companies that had no marketing, it was 2015 or 16, didn't even know what marketing automation was. And it took 2-year period of time, marketing automation into Salesforce, Facebook ads running, significant budget, video podcast with 30 episodes. It takes years to do those things. And so, but once you start moving forward, you start moving faster. And the goal is that the destination is very clear. It's just how long it's going to take you to get there relative to the other people that you're competing with. And it might not be a direct competitor. It might be something that you don't see right now. And for a lot of companies, it's the status quo. And so people look very directly at, like, these are my 7 competitors in the category, but there's a lot of things, if you're playing business for a long time, that you don't see right now that could be competitive against you.
And I think this is like particularly timely for right now. I mean, like, everything with the pandemic has, like, I really think we're literally at a time where the next 5 to 10 years are going to be extremely transformational. And so 10 years from now, we're going to look back and it's like, oh, in 2021, when this company started doing this. So I really believe we're at this really interesting time in history that we're like living through in the moment, and it's hard to see it when you're living it day to day. But I do think, like, the timing of trying new things and taking risks, I think I think the time is ripe to do it now.
I don't see it as taking risks. I really don't. Like, I think that it's the necessary investments, just like you would invest in your product. And it goes back to the root cause, is that these investments can't happen because of what's happening inside of the organization, needing to invest all their money in lead gen to run this model. And so smart CMOs that I talk to spend somewhere between 20 and 30% on things that are difficult to measure, that are experiments, that are things like that. And ideally, like, some of those experiments build IP or learnings, or you need a new resource that injects a different way of looking at things inside of your company, or whatever those things are. But a lot of companies aren't out doing those things. And if they are doing them, I would argue that they are not in the most effective places. And so I think, I just think it just feels really obvious.
I'm with you.
Let's get back to a couple questions if we got a couple. I like this kind of like back and forth type of deal.
All right. I'm going to bring our friend Omar on. He's got some good questions. Omar, you've been unmuted.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
What is up? Great to see you again.
Great. Always great seeing you, man. Always great seeing you. I feel like for some reason, people know that I'm doing this at this time, so people like to call me and interrupt. So I
ignore the call. We got more important things to do.
Exactly. So, Chris, something you've talked about before, and I completely agree with you, is that this idea of like a funnel is kind of a broken system, because it just especially in the B2B world, it just doesn't happen that way. Mm-hmm. Right. We try to put things in a specific like pathway, and it's like, oh, this is exactly what happens. It doesn't happen. Like the post you guys made about, organic, all your deals coming through organic traffic, but you don't do no SEO, right? Mm-hmm. And on the other side of it, it's, the buyer's journey, which is like, they come in through here and they read this thing and do that thing. And then eventually they convert and you have like a, $100,000, contract or something. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I find myself having to go back to utilize those type of frameworks when I'm trying to explain either whether it's to sales or to the rest of the company as to why we do certain things. Mm-hmm. And while it's broken, I'm struggling to find a different framework that might help it, in terms of organizing things. Mm-hmm. I like the systems approach you guys take. That's my approach as well. But I think sometimes like you do need some kind of a map or something to point to visually that someone who isn't, a marketer like yourself or like me conceptually understand it and say, okay, like, that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think I have an answer for you. I'm not sure if it's the right one, because I'm literally just thinking out loud. But the way that I would look at it, just based on your question, is that there is this large pool of potential people that could buy our stuff, right? And they're just swimming around in the pool, doing their day-to-day, getting along fine, different things like that. And at some point, they decide to, I don't know, I'm going to lose the analogy here, but they decide to get out of the pool, or they decide to move into a buying cycle. And the idea is who wins the pool. Get it? And so like how your audiences could be certain ones, engagement could be certain ones, brand affinity, there's a lot of different surrogate measures for it. But it's the idea of when someone moves into a buying cycle, who are they going to buy from? It's if I threw out a category right now for anything that people didn't own, and I said, like, for a car, like, a lot of people think about a certain brand that they would buy. The same thing happens in software, right? And so, like, if somebody knew that they needed to get, procurement software for their finance team, like, a lot of companies probably have one in mind. And so that's the game that I think people need to win, is the idea. And I'm trying to think about through it. Like, these people are swimming around in the pool, they're doing their own things. And the goal is, how do we bring value to them so that when they move into a buying cycle, they consider us first? And if we're able to communicate with them effectively, oddly enough, they move into buying cycles faster.
Yeah.
Because they're aware of the things that we're doing. And so I think that the thing that's wrong with the funnel is that there's expectations around how people are going to move through it, that sales engages far too early for most people. Like, I think that buyers want to do most of the stuff on their own. And I think that they want to talk to sales when they want to talk to sales. I think that's it's a really obvious thing in buyer behavior right now. And I don't believe that it's a linear motion. Like, there's plenty of things that I have had a scope of work on my desk to do. And I'm at the end of the funnel in their view. And then I say, we're not going to do this. And I'm going all the way back to the beginning. Like, oddly enough, like, if we had to buy it again, I might not even consider them.
Yeah.
And so that's I think where the funnel breaks down. But I like it more about, there's all of these people out here. And our goal is to communicate with them effectively so that when they move in, they consider us. I'm not sure that's going to fly with some people, but it's interesting to think about, right? Because, like, let's go a little bit further on this one. So imagine that a pool is 20,000 people. Then you can try and quantify or estimate, like, how much of the pool, like, are in your audience, are aware of your brand, consider your brand the leading one in the category, associate it with the exact category, measure it against how they associate it relative to competitors. Like, there's tons of different things that you could do as surrogate measures to understand how the market feels about you relative to other things or your category. And then the goal would be to, over time, just win the hearts and minds of a larger share of the pool.
I like that answer, and I completely agree with you. And actually, that analogy helps a lot, because my thing is that, like, we had a demo, a really good demo come in through today, and I was like, okay, let's go see how this business came through. Mm-hmm. They saw a lead generation ad for a demo, an analysis on LinkedIn. They mm-hmm. clicked it. They signed up. This was 2 months ago. I need to check with sales, but I think they got demoed 2 months ago, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, that didn't convert into a sale, but in that process of the last 2 months, they attended 2 webinars, which had nothing to do with our product. My thing was, like, who cares about talking about the problem we solve? Let's talk about things that, like, for us, it's medical practices. These mm-hmm. doctors are interested in, which is being entrepreneurial, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
He went to 2 of these webinars and then came back and registered for another demo. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not obvious to me, but I think what you said is really true, which is, we don't know when people are going to be in the mood to buy and stuff. And I think, like, just creating the content, again, I learned a lot from just watching Refine Labs, which is, you guys do a lot of aspirational content, you do thought leadership stuff, and then you do things that make me better as a marketer, and I'll go on record saying, like, I think I've referred you guys, like, 3 or 4 times to other marketers who are at, like, large SaaS companies. I'm like, you should look at Refine Labs and Chris Walker, because I don't know of anybody else.
The word of mouth era. And you've never worked with us.
No.
Get it? And there are plenty of software vendors that I recommend to other people that I've never used before.
Yeah, and I think the reason why is, and I'm thinking this out loud. It's the same thing that I went through many, many years ago. I think it's sad you and I didn't know each other when we were both in med device. It wasn't funny. But my thing is, like, if I have to sell myself to a company, why should I wait to the interview? Let me do that ahead of time so they learn about me for free on their mm-hmm. own. and then the right person is going to pick me. And I think maybe, do you feel like
that definitely works? That's an incredible candidate strategy right now.
You're right.
Like,
by the way, I'm hiring.
It's very clear in my mind, like 10 or 15 people that if the opportunity came out, I would go and get them because I know about them and I want them here. Right. Yeah. And so that's a candidate strategy that people should, it's the exact same thing, whether you're trying to get someone to join your company, whether you're trying to join a company, whether you're trying to get a customer, it's how do you communicate effectively with people in ways that they like so that they become aware of you so that more opportunities open up for you.
Totally. No, I completely agree with that. One quick compliment and I'll let you go. So I'm currently trying to hire like a growth marketing manager, and it's really hard to find that unicorn of a marketer. So one of the strategies I figured out to do is I'm going to go and see who's liking and commenting in Chris Walker's posts and Refine Lives, because if they're engaging with that content, they obviously think the right way and they're going to execute the right way. So again, like another testament to how your content.
Yeah. The challenge is, Omar, you just gave away the secret. Now everyone on the podcast knows it's going to be way more competitive in there.
I know. And
hopefully you got the person already.
You just got more engagement. There you go.
Let's edit that one out for Omar. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thanks,
Good
Chris.
to see you, man. Yeah, of course.
Good to see you, man.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
I got a couple anonymous questions that I'll ask on people's behalf if you're up for them.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I want to go to the last agenda topic, and then we'll wrap up with questions. I feel like the last agenda topic is sort of like an afterthought, and I'm going to try and introduce it more into the episode because we get to the end, and I'm like, I've been talking for 2 hours, and I'm tired, and I just kind of like mail it in. So let's try something different this time. So the topic is brand demand ABM, which I believe in the ideal category winning demand marketing model that you use all three for most companies, right? Product led, different things like that. But we're pretty much talking mid-market enterprise SaaS over here on this show. And so for those companies, I believe that you need all three running in parallel, and they'll break them down in the differences. ABM, one-to-one full orchestration between sales and marketing. A lot of companies say that they're doing ABM, but they're not. They're running demand and outbound sales put together. I think that ABM is in this context that I'm using is true one-to-one, $500,000 million deals plus. And so you have that going on a top tier of accounts. Each account that is in that pool, you have different creative. You have outbound motions, you have measurement, you have messaging. And imagine if you had 50 accounts that you needed to, and you were running this, and you needed to move through messages. You wanted to put a video in LinkedIn to that account, then that video would be absolutely personalized to that account. I don't see almost any company do that. And 92% of companies have an ABM strategy. That's the way that I see ABM from a marketing and sales standpoint. I think a lot of companies are trying to do that already and not doing the other two that I'm talking about here. The other two, demand. This is either one to many, aka broad across your entire ICP, or in one to few, but it's not really few in this context, in segmented by like industry or something. But these, we're talking in the lower AC, probably less than 250K ACV deals at this point. And so there might be a lot of companies in this. You might have a healthcare vertical that there are 500 accounts in there, and you're just going to run one to few in this model, demand marketing. And so you can have a healthcare specific content, creative, different things like that. You can also have a broad top level one that's talking about value prop messaging, strategic narrative, different things like that. That's running through a paid distribution model to drive demand in the market and awareness of the product or service that you have. And then you need a brand component. The brand component is focused on organic channels, community, events, a podcast. What am I missing here? So things, organic channels and a strategic narrative that you're putting out there through organic distribution that creates affinity to your business and overall scale, right? Like the things that we're doing right now at Refine Labs, just for context for people, is 100% in this model brand marketing. And so having like what we're doing plus ABM plus a broad ICP paid demand engine for a mid-market enterprise SaaS, that's the model. And I don't see I see companies moving to ABM and pretending that they're doing brand, but it's actually just events that they're inviting their target accounts to. That's not brand. That's sales. And so, and then they forget about this entire massive segment of broad ICP that they're not targeting, or they're targeting with display ads, or they're probably not going after it all, or they're waiting for them to come and find them because they're not targeting them in their ABM model. And so I just feel like it's not, what I'm trying to tell people is it's not one or the other. The actual solution is all of them, and just using them in the right places and injecting them into your organization at the right time. If we were going to do this, if I was the CMO of a 500-person SaaS company, I was building this from the ground up or whatever, we had a team where we were switching it up, the first place to start is demand. The reason that the first place to start is demand is because you have a broad ICP, you can get results quickly, and you can use paid to make that go faster, to distribute content into the market. Additionally, there's a massive operational system in actually running demand, being able to produce create content that people like, distribute that, measure it, make sure that it works, have a feedback loop to get better, have a team, an operational structure, an IP in order to do those things, because it's going to get exponentially more complicated when you go and do it in a one-to-one model. So you might as well figure it out when you can run creative and content to a lot of companies at once. The next thing that I would do is I would go to brand. So I would go to a podcast, organic social, community, events, brand collaborations, aka influencers. I would go to those things. And then once I had those things sort of working and figuring out, I would stack ABM, because ABM is the most difficult, and most difficult from a marketing standpoint. Let me keep going on this one. To do it really well from a marketing standpoint, it's incredibly difficult. What most companies do right now is do small marketing tactics as a guise for outbound sales. And so I think there's a level of operational or organizational readiness for ABM that actually gets built through the brand motion and the demand, or the brand and demand motion, so that when you move to ABM, you have a podcast, and on that podcast you were talking about one of your target account strategies, and you were breaking down what they could do better, and then you clip that 3-minute segment of your CTO talking about how, whoever IBMs could do something better, and you take that clip and you run it to the 1,000 people that you can target in IBM that makes sense on LinkedIn ads with the video that's exactly about them, but the video actually gets created through a brand strategy. And so that's how I see the pieces going together. I actually think that it sort of goes into the marketing roadmap, or the innovation and different things, and when you're actually ready to do certain things. And if I was going to do it as a marketing leader, that's the order and process that I would do them in.
That was awesome. I felt like you gave that last agenda topic. It
deserved it.
For that. Our friend Carl just came on, and so I'm going to actually bring him on instead of asking some of the anonymous questions. We always love you being on the show, Carl.
Hey everybody. Hey Chris. Hey,
What's
Megan.
up, Carl?
Yeah, just a quick question. We're starting to see a lot of our competitors, I guess 2 parts. One is a paid search. They're starting to run conquest campaigns on us. So they would bid on not just, branded terms, but our brand. And then we're starting to see articles versus articles on us, like lots of them. So now I know our our agency wanted to start running conquest campaigns. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to every single competitor that comes out there. But how about those articles that are leveraging our brand and running it and actually putting paid behind it? So what we're seeing is they're running paid media to those articles using our brand and directing it to X company versus us.
It's a common tactic. I would not be worried about it. And the reason why, and I'll tell you, and then you'll really understand. When you go to, and you want a pair of shoes and you go to Google and you type in Nike and somebody else's ads show up, what do? You buy Nike.
Yeah.
And so it's the brand impact is what the brand is what matters here. I've run a ton of competitor campaigns. If people want to play down there, be my guest. It's incredibly expensive. The customer acquisition costs is low. You're going to get a ton of people that are talking to your SDRs that you squeeze through a landing page that say, I'm looking for support from this company because I'm a customer. And they're in an SDR call with another competitor because the competitor tricked them on a brand ad. And so like when these things happen, just recognize that if they're doing those things, it's actually a good thing for you because they're wasting a bunch of money and they're not doing certain things that work better. And so you should protect your brand terms. You should have those optimized. You should try and have as high as impression share as possible. You should do those things. But if they take, I think that it would be less than one customer a year that they would get through those types of tactics. And it's just like, whatever, like you want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that to do that. And as a buyer, nobody's going to clicking on a Google ad and going to some landing page that's clearly biased from a company comparing one or the other and buying like that. I just don't think people do that. And so hopefully I'm helping you get a little bit of confidence here because we've run enough competitor campaigns. Often we do it to test, but oftentimes we just shut them off. Like, and so you don't see what's happening in their data. You just see what's happening on the front end. And I imagine what's happening on the back end is not good.
No. And that's why I told our agency, I was like, well, we've had our best quarter. Our first month into this quarter has been amazing. So why would we change anything that we're doing? And then I start looking at, well, that's fine if they like back to the whole point. If they're playing in the capture demand, I'm just going to continue playing in the create demand.
Yeah.
And you can spend as much money you want there, but we'll be top of mind. It won't really matter. Right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what we do for our company. There are plenty of marketing agencies that spend $90 a click on SaaS marketing agency. And we've won way before that.
Yeah.
And so, and I honestly don't, I think it's an interesting question. Yours is on branded. Like, I don't know if people are bidding on our branded terms, and frankly, I don't care. But when it's non-branded too, that's interesting for me because the person that's searching SaaS marketing agency is typically not a good customer for us. I want someone that's searching Refine Labs because I'm going to create demand strategy selling a unique differentiated product. And so it's all about, for me, funneling people through a branded search. And I think that's what if you go and look, there's plenty of companies that have non-branded Google Ads data. And there's some companies that we're considering shutting them off because it just doesn't make it's on the borderline of making economic sense or not to spend the money that way when we have create demand strategies that are driving people through branded organic and converting. Yeah. And so, yeah, I on that one, just keep doing what you're doing. It's more effective. Like you're having a lot of success. I think that it's a good signal for you that they're doing that, because if they're doing all that, they're probably not thinking about doing the things that you're doing right now that are working better. And it goes back into the innovation thing. So for you, it's how now you have this thing that's working. How do you put experiments in place to get the next 2 or 3 steps ahead? That's where you are right now. And I don't know what, we talk about some things on here, and I know you have a lot of cool stuff going on. So I'm not exactly sure what it is for you, but they're out there. And so while they sit there and waste $500,000 a year on Google ads, what can you do to continue to move further and further ahead so that you're talking to the, prospective buyers in places way before they would ever get to search?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
Cool. Thought you had a question on this thing too.
What was that?
Thought you had a question on this article.
Oh, did you read the article?
I skimmed it. I got some things circled, but I wouldn't say that I'm like fully
I
prepared, but whatever.
I thought that was a pretty neat article. I just saw it and I was like, oh yeah, that kind of made sense to share that on the show and see what your take was.
Yeah. I'm not sure this is going to be helpful for the listeners just because nobody's read it, but like there's an article, if people want to look it up, I'll touch on it briefly and then we'll get back to questions. There's an article that I don't know when it was published, that it was through the LinkedIn B2B Institute and then some like market research firm. And the title of it is Majority of B2B Advertising is Ineffective. And the premise of it is that companies do not take the creative seriously enough. And I believe in this a lot. This is exactly what I think I said this on an episode three weeks ago about that. We are pot committed on creative right now because we're running demand for 25 companies and we see how much the impact has between having good, consistent creative with a lot of variations that you put out consistently versus when you have not good creative, not good copywriting, doesn't come out consistently, you don't have enough creative to support the budget, and the differences in the results between the two. Soon we're gonna have the whole offering where we're gonna do creative and media together, and there's not gonna be another option because it works so much better when you have all of them together and they work together. And so being able to put it out consistently and then take audience feedback and then feed that back in an agile way and then run more is something that I'm really interested in. It's also about what you're trying to do. I think the reason that most B2B advertising is ineffective and they don't value the creative, they mentioned a couple of things in here like that companies are sales led or product led or engineering led, and therefore they think that creative is arts and crafts and doesn't make an impact. That was one thing that was quoted in here. But I think the real root of why they are not looking, that's probably the real root, but as a potential symptom of it is that I lost my train of thought. That I'm gone.
Or you were saying like they were saying that the creative doesn't matter, but I think you're making the point that it does matter a lot.
It does matter a lot. We see that in all of our data, and it's not only about the testing, but it's about how it gets fed back and the volume of it. And so we have companies that put out a ton of volume with us, and we have companies that don't put out a ton of volume. And the more volume, the more variations, the faster you learn, the different things like that. And then, I got back onto my thought. Thank you, Megan. It's because most companies are only focused on lead gen. They're only focused on putting the ad in front of somebody and getting an email, not whether or not the ad made an impact. And so if you thought about, I've been doing this since 2016, it was, what is the impact when I distribute this to somebody and they consume the content? Did it move someone forward? Do they learn something they didn't know? Do they feel differently about our company? Whatever those things are. And I don't think B2B companies think like that. And so I believe that a majority of B2B advertising is ineffective right now. It's pretty clear because it's mainly on the mindset and the lack of respect for how important creative is to actually being successful in advertising or in just general content marketing.
I think the other angle here that's really interesting is getting feedback from your market and your customers about what messaging and creative is actually resonating. So instead of spending all this time thinking you're coming up with the best design and the best copy, put a lot of different variations out there and actually look at the data and get the feedback on what's working and what's not working and lean harder into what's working. It's another analogy to like not sitting in a boardroom and making decisions and like actually getting out in the market and putting stuff out there and iterating quickly on the feedback that you're getting, which I think is another thing that not a lot of other companies are doing very well.
Mm-hmm. And it tends to be the thing that is most scrutinized from both a budget and just an overall quality standpoint and least understood. I've been the person that put together, the new website or the new visual identity or this specific campaign or video, and how much scrutiny you get from the rest of the company about what you're doing when they have no idea what you're doing. They have no idea about how marketing works, where it's going to be distributed, what you're trying to accomplish, different things like that. Part of it's your job to communicate those to those people. But the point that I'm trying to make is that there's very few people in a lot of functions that are going to go over to somebody in finance and say, hey, like, you didn't put that in the right GL code, blah, 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 blah. This is wrong. Not a lot of people in other functions. You're not going to go over to your product team and say, hey, like, what, I don't even know enough to call someone out on this one. Like, hey, like, your lines of code are wrong. You need to actually do it this way. Not a lot of people are going to go over to the sales team, except for people that are in sales, but not a lot of people are going to go over to the sales team and say, hey, your demo really sucks. But when you got stuff going on in marketing, everyone thinks that they're an expert. Everyone thinks they know what it is and what color to use and what words to use. And I think that people just undervalue how much thought goes into it and just how important it is to the success of marketing. Like,
I think also it's a matter of like objectivity versus subjectivity too. Like
totally
how something looks, people think that their initial emotional response is like justified and super valid. And I think people lose sight of the ability to actually objectively be creative, right? And there is a way to go about that. And
so it's like, instead of having all of these opinions about what words are better or what pictures better, let's run all 20 versions of them and let our customers' data tell us which one worked the best.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's get over some questions.
Okay, I have two.
Good to see you, Carl.
I have happy birthday to your wife. I have two questions that were asked to be anonymous. So one's kind of a quick one, and then one is more of a scenario. So we'll go through both of these. So this was actually, the first one was not anonymous. Our friend Sean from LinkedIn, from Singapore, he said, I really would like to know what your favorite B2B tech stack is at the moment and why. Plus, you have a super show, and I'll be recommending it to my clients.
Okay. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate you. My stack is pretty simple. So the things that I'm looking for on like at the core are Salesforce and a marketing automation system that is ideally either Marketo or HubSpot. Like I'm not in the marketing automation system. I literally never log in. I literally never use them, but I just want one of those two because they tend to work the best and give me the stuff that I need in Salesforce. And so that's what I call like the foundation of a building. Like you need those things to operate. And then it's the extension things off of that. The things that I like using the most right now is a combination of metadata and 6 Sense. And so a lot of people believe that, and I think a lot of people in the market believe that 6 Sense and metadata are competitors. Maybe they think they are. I'm not sure. I actually think they're 100% complementary products. I think they are best used together. And so 6 Sense has a lot more value on activating outbound, predictive analytics. I use it a lot for reporting and finding insights about the impact of our ads that other tools can't measure. And we use metadata for all of the targeting at the account level, specifically on Facebook and Instagram, where we spend millions of dollars a month targeting people with content and creative that moves them through a buying cycle. And so and then you run all the media across channels, and then people start to have intent signals, and then your outbound team can do way more effective outbound than what they're doing before. And so those are two tools that I actually like using a lot right now.
I mean, I think that's
honestly,
it,
man,
right?
It's not that complicated. I think that's it. And then just like the core, like it's like almost goes without saying, table stakes like Zoom, like stuff like that, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads manager, things like that.
Awesome. So we've heard scenarios like this before, but this person really wants your thoughts on this. They work at a tech company, Series A, 50 employees. They sell software to retailers. The software is an actual app that's used in store. It's a very niche product. And the people who make the purchasing decision are not usually the end user in the store. It's like a VP or C level at the corporation. ACV is around 350K plus. It's a long sales cycle. The CEO doesn't believe in marketing. So she's a 1-person marketing team. There's a 6-person sales team. And she's having a ton of difficulty getting buy-in from the CEO to do the type of marketing she wants to do. She just got an attribution tool after campaigning to get one for 2 years. She's running LinkedIn ads, Facebook retargeting, essentially for lead gen though, because of the CEO, but nothing's really been successful so far. She's adding 1 more person to her team, and her question is, what can she do that can satisfy the CEO with the like lead volume that he wants while trying to actually do some real marketing? She says, PS, I'm looking for new opportunities where marketing is more valued. But do you have any advice for her?
Yeah.
In the meantime,
So she's heard this segment before, I imagine.
Yeah.
So I'll just pass on that little PSA and we'll get into the details. So what I would do here if you were going to stay is get aligned on what you need to deliver and then deliver it as cost effective. Like, so get aligned with the CEO. Maybe it's 50 leads. Who knows what the number is, but get aligned on what it is. Make sure that's realistic for you and that you can do it with somewhere between 50 and 60, 75% of your budget. So you have 50 to 25 to 50% left over. And so figure that out, which then allows you to, and then for like lead gen and different things like that, if you have a realistic goal, running lead gen on these channels is not that complicated. Like, we can go in there and get leads at an acceptable cost very easily, put together any piece of creative. The algorithm's going to optimize for the conversion. It's not that difficult. And so it won't necessarily take a lot of your time, which then frees you up to do some things that you want to do. And so, but the core is getting aligned on what do I need to deliver? And then if I'm able to deliver this, I'd also like to do this 1 or 2 things. The reason that I want to do these 1 or 2 things is because I think that over time, if we're able to get one of these to work, that we're going to be able to get way more accounts than running our lead gen model that hasn't gotten us a customer in the past 2 years. Another thing, since you've been doing it for a long time, is to look back at the historical data. This is what I did when I was in 2016. Is I looked at where all the marketing budget was being spent. I tracked all of it against revenue, and then I just had a logical conversation first with the CMO, and then ultimately with the CEO and the CFO and other people on the team. And it was just like this is what's happening right now. This is what we're doing. Do you feel like this is working? And get everyone aligned, because if the data is what you say it is, then a logical person would say that this might not be working. And so if part of it is like, it's not necessarily about the CEO doesn't believe in marketing, it's that the CEO doesn't understand that the things that they want to do in marketing aren't working. So it's helping them understand that.
All right. For that. It's almost 9 o'clock. It's time for closing thoughts.
I'm good to shut it down.
For that.
At some time, I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point I'm going to be like, just a dream that I have, that I'm like, okay, it's time to shut it down. And people are like cheering, like, we want more. Okay. Anyway, it's not tonight though. We're shutting it down. Okay. So on Thursday, event with Dave Gerhardt. If you're not registered, we'd love to see you there. The topics were like 9. I think there's an email going out tomorrow with the final topics, but we're pretty close. Some interesting things. I think I'm going to get brand collaboration influencer in there in a little bit more detail, because it's something that I want to go into more depth about how it's actually executed today. But we're also going to talk a lot more strategy, like a lot more top level marketing strategy that Dave and I haven't gotten into before. So I think people would like that. That's on Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And with that, like, I always love having you here, especially like with the same crew. Carl, great to hear you're having a lot of success. Omar, great to see you. and just appreciate all of you contributing and tuning in and enjoying it. So I enjoy having all you here.
Great to see you guys.
Good to see you all. Have a good night.